stood at the observation window of the research station, looking out at the dead planet below. Helios Prime was once a thriving colony world for the people. Now it was burning. Smoke rose from the surface in thick columns, and she could see the bright orange flashes of weapons fire cutting through the darkness. The communication system crackled with desperate calls for help. The station commander, David Brooks, was trying to coordinate with the central government but the response was always the same. The council was discussing the matter. The council was weighing options. The council was doing nothing. Had been sent here as a cultural observer and diplomat. Her role was to study how they were responding to the attacks by the raiders. What she was witnessing was not strength or strategy. It was panic and paralysis. They refused to use military force. Violence was against their principles. They believed in negotiation and peaceful resolution. But they did not believe in negotiation. The alarms suddenly screamed through the station. Red lights flooded the corridors, and the automated voice announced that the outer hull had been breached. They were not just attacking the planet anymore. They were attacking the station itself. Ran toward the central hub where the crew was gathering. She saw fear on every face. They were not warriors. They were scientists and teachers and scholars. They did not know how to fight. Their entire civilization had turned away from violence 3,000 years ago, after the Great War that had nearly destroyed them. The ancient texts told stories of a time when the galaxy was filled with brutal species who made war on each other without mercy. They had learned their lesson and chosen a different path. They built a society based on knowledge, art, and philosophy. Violence became something that existed only in their history books and ancient legends. They had no such restraint. They were slavers and raiders who took what they wanted. They had been attacking the outer colonies for decades, capturing and forcing them into terrible work in the mines and factories of there. Commander Brooks was at the main console, his blue skin taking on a pale shade as the damage reports came flooding in. The energy shields were failing. They had maybe 10 minutes before they breached the inner sections. "We need to evacuate," said, her voice steady even though her heart was racing. "The shuttle bay is already damaged," Brooks replied, not taking his eyes off the screens. "We will not make it." "Then we send a distress signal," another officer, a young female named, said. "Someone will hear us." "The nearest fleet is 3 days away," Brooks said quietly. "We will be captured long before they arrive." Felt the weight of helplessness pressing down on her. She thought about everything she had studied in the ancient texts. Humanity had once ruled vast regions of space. They had been warriors and explorers and had created great civilizations. But then something changed. They made a terrible war that nearly destroyed everything, and they vanished from known space. Most scholars believed they had simply died out. Some said they had retreated into space beyond the known systems. A few ancient texts suggested they had learned from their mistakes and chosen to fade away rather than let their violent nature harm others. A few people wondered if the stories were true. The first explosion rocked the station. The crew members grabbed onto whatever was near them to stay upright. The lights flickered and dimmed. They were cutting through the inner doors. "Get to the emergency shelters," Brooks ordered, but there was no hope in his voice. The shelters would only delay the capture by a few hours. Moved with the other crew members toward the lower levels. As they ran through the corridors, she could hear the sounds of breech charges and heavy weapons. They were systematic and brutal. They were soldiers in a way that they could never be. Suddenly, the lights went out completely. Emergency systems kicked in, casting everything in a red glow. The crew huddled together in a storage room, listening to the sounds of the raiders moving through the station above them. Then there was a new sound. Weapons fire, but different, more controlled, more organized. The soldiers were shouting in alarm. Their voices were confused and angry. Then heard something she had never expected to hear. A human voice, clear and commanding. "Move left. Cover the eastern passage. Watch for civilians in the lower corridors." The voice was calm and steady. The person speaking it knew exactly what they were doing. The soldiers tried to stand their ground, but they were being pushed back. The weapon's fire grew more intense and then suddenly stopped. There was only silence. Minutes passed, held her breath, not knowing what was happening above them. Would the return? Had the voice belonged to another enemy? The storage room door opened, and the crew tensed, ready to face whatever came next. A man stood in the doorway. He was human. Knew this immediately because she had studied the ancient texts. She had seen the drawings and read the descriptions, but nothing had prepared her for seeing one in person. His face was weathered. His eyes were the color of dark stone. He wore clothing that seemed to merge with the station's technology in ways she did not understand. A weapon was held in his hand, but it was not pointed at them. "You are safe now," he said. His accent was strange, but his words were clear. "They are gone. Some are captured, others ran. My team has secured the station." Gasped, "You are human." The humans were a myth. The man's expression did not change. "We are very real, and we have been watching you." Stepped forward. "Why would you watch us?" The human looked at her with dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient knowledge. "Because your people are kind, because you have forgotten how to protect yourselves, and because we cannot watch people suffer any longer and do nothing." He extended his hand to help them from the storage room. Took it, and when his grip closed around her fingers, she felt the strength of someone who had lived a life of struggle and sacrifice. "My name is Hayes," he said. "I'm a warrior from a place beyond your known space, and I have a message for your council. Humanity has returned, led and the other survivors through the damaged corridors of the research station." His team moved with military precision, checking every corner and every sealed door. There were 5 of them total, all human, all wearing the same strange uniforms that seemed to shift colors based on their surroundings. In the main medical bay, they set up a temporary command post, worked with the crew to treat the wounded and secure the station. He moved between tasks with efficiency, helping to stabilize an injured officer named Gregory who had been caught in the initial assault. "How did you get here so fast?" asked. "There is no way a ship could have reached us so quickly from known space." Looked at her while cleaning blood from his hands. "We have ships that move faster than you have achieved. We have technology that you do not have because we have had 3,000 years to develop it in secret." "Then the stories are true," said, sitting down slowly. "You did not die out, you just left." "We were destroyed," said, his voice becoming harder. "The first war nearly ended our species. We chose to retreat rather than inflict more damage on the galaxy. We thought that if we left, if we disappeared, the cycle of violence would stop." He sat down across from her. His face was illuminated by the pale light of the medical screens around them. "We were wrong. We thought the galaxy would learn from our example. Instead, it forgot about us, became a myth, and the violence continued." Wanted to ask more questions, but an alarm sounded. One of his team members, a woman with short hair named, ran into the medical bay. "Commander, we are getting signals from the fleet. They are moving toward this position. They will arrive in approximately 6 hours." Nodded. "Send them a message. Tell them that the threat has been contained. Inform them that representatives from the human colonies are here and request permission to make contact with their council." Left to send the message. Turned back to, "Your government will want answers. They will want to know what we are and what we want." "What do you want?" asked. Was quiet for a long moment. He pulled out a small device from his pocket. Images appeared in the air above it, projections of light-forming pictures. Saw a home, a simple building made of stone and wood. She saw trees and water and a clear sky. She saw a woman with dark hair standing in front of the house. She was smiling. "This is my home," said. "This is my wife. We have been married for 23 years. She is a biologist. She studies plants and how they survive in harsh environments." Another image appeared. A young woman with dark eyes was sitting at a desk covered in papers and data screens. "This is my daughter, Caroline. She is 20. She wants to be a researcher like her mother. She wants to understand how life adapts to new worlds." Made the images disappear. "I have also been a soldier. I have killed people. I have seen friends die. I have made decisions that cost lives. These are things I do not take pride in, but they are part of what I am." He looked directly at, "Your people need warriors right now. You need people who understand how to fight against those who do not respect peace or negotiation. They will not stop. They will come back. If you do not have the strength to stop them, more of your people will be enslaved. More families will be torn apart. Our council will never accept military solutions," said, but her voice was uncertain. She had just watched the tear through her station. She had seen what happens when a peaceful people faced ruthless enemies. "They will," said quietly, "when they understand what is at stake." Over the next few hours, shared more information with. He explained that humans had been monitoring the outer colonies for decades. They had watched as the attacks increased. They had tracked the expanding slave markets. They had calculated the number of who had been captured and enslaved. The data was staggering. Tens of thousands of people, families broken apart, lives destroyed, and the council had done nothing except send diplomatic requests to the galactic authorities and hope that the violence would stop on its own. "We have rules," explained. "We do not interfere with other species unless we are invited or unless we are directly threatened. But 3 days ago, they captured a group of children from the settlement below. They were going to take them to their ship." His jaw clenched. "We reached our limit. We have children of our own. We could not sit back any longer." Understood what he meant without him saying it directly. Humanity had not revealed itself to the galaxy because they were afraid of what they would do if they fully committed to protecting others. They had stayed hidden because they knew their own power and their own capacity for violence. But the sight of enslaved children had broken through that restraint. The fleet arrived within the promised 6 hours. The commander of the fleet, a stern officer named, demanded that, and his team be taken into custody. They were to be held until the council could examine them and determine if they were a threat. Did not resist. He handed over his weapons and allowed his team to be disarmed. But before he was escorted away, he asked to speak with. "Your people are afraid," he said. "That is understandable, but you need to understand something important. We came alone because we wanted to show that we respect your independence. We wanted to show that we are not invaders." He placed a data storage device in her hand. "Give this to your council. It contains our history. It contains the truth about what happened to humanity and why we left, and it contains our offer." "What offer?" asked. "To help you protect your people," said simply. "Not to rule you, not to take control, just to help you survive until you can learn to defend yourselves." As the guards led away, held the data device in her hand. She felt the weight of it far more than she should have. In her hand was the secret that would change everything. In her hand was the proof that the myths were real. The council chamber was a massive circular room with high ceilings that reached toward the clouds. The walls were covered in crystalline patterns that reflected light, creating an effect like looking at the stars themselves. It was meant to inspire peace and contemplation. Today it was filled with tension and fear. Stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by guards. The 12 council members sat in elevated seats arranged in a circle around him. Behind them in the gallery sat hundreds of observers and advisors. Every seat was filled. The whole world was watching through broadcast feeds. Sat in the advisory section, her heart pounding in her chest. She had watched the council members' faces when first walked into the chamber. She had seen the shock, the fear, the confusion. Some had shown anger. A few had shown interest. The head of the council, an ancient named with skin that had turned white with age, opened the proceedings. His voice was formal and careful. You claim to be human, said, a species that our records suggest has been extinct or departed known space for 3,000 years. How do we know you are what you claim to be? Remained calm. Because I have allowed myself to be taken into custody, because I have surrendered my weapons, because I came alone instead of bringing a fleet. If I was a threat to you, I would not have done any of these things. That proves nothing, another council member said. Her name was Victoria, and she was known for her hard positions on security issues. You could be a deceiver. Your species could be planning an invasion, and you are the advanced scout. The ancient texts suggest that humans were warlike and aggressive, added. They drove many species from their territories. They conquered worlds and enslaved populations. Why should we trust that you have changed? Met their gaze without flinching. The ancient texts tell the truth, but not the whole truth. Yes, humans were warlike. Yes, we conquered and fought and made mistakes that cost millions of lives. We did all of these things because we believed that our way was the only way. He paused, letting his words sink in. Then we came close to destroying ourselves completely. In the final war, we fought other human factions for control of our. We used weapons that could destroy entire cities. When it was over, half of humanity was dead, and our world was damaged in ways that took centuries to heal. He looked directly at the council members. We chose to leave because we could not trust ourselves. We had proven that we were a danger to ourselves and potentially to others, so we left known space. We built communities in the outer regions, and we spent 3,000 years learning how to be better, not just militarily, philosophically, ethically. And yet you are here with weapons, Victoria said coldly. You are here with military technology. You are here telling us that you are our saviors. I am here because thousands of your people are enslaved, replied, his voice sharp now. I am here because they took children. I am here because you have done nothing to stop them. The chamber erupted in protests and angry voices. Guards moved forward as if to stop from speaking, but raised his hand and they stepped back. We chose the path of peace, said, his voice steady. We refused to become like the violent species of our past. We chose negotiation and reason over force. And your people are paying the price for that choice, said. I am not saying that peace is wrong. I am saying that peace requires the strength to defend itself. A mouse cannot be peaceful with a hawk. It can only be prey. Felt herself stand up. Before she could stop herself, she was walking down from the advisory gallery toward the chamber floor. Guards tried to stop her, but she pushed past them. I was at Helios Prime, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. I watched the attack. I saw our people panic because we did not know how to fight. If his team had not arrived, we would all be on slave ships right now. She turned to face the council. We can talk about philosophy and principles, but those mean nothing to the people in chains. Those mean nothing to the children who will never come home. The girl is right, said another council member, a younger man named Lawrence. We cannot ignore what is happening in our outer colonies. We cannot pretend that peaceful intentions will stop the. What do you propose? Asked. That we abandon our principles and become warriors like the humans. I propose, said, that you let us help you learn to defend yourselves. I propose that we work together to push back the threat. And I propose that this becomes the beginning of a new relationship between humans and. He pulled out a data device, similar to the one he had given. This contains everything we know about the operations. It contains their supply routes, their strongholds, their troop movements. It contains the locations of your enslaved people. With this information and with coordinated military action, we can strike them in a way that will cripple their ability to raid your colonies. The council members looked at each other, uncertainty flickering across their faces. This was a turning point, and they all knew it. To accept help from humans was to accept that their way of handling the crisis had failed. It was to accept that sometimes strength was necessary. It was to accept that the perfect peace they had built was built on the suffering of others. "If we agree to this," said slowly, "what does humanity expect in return?" "Recognition," said simply. "Acceptance that we exist, a place in the galactic community, and a partnership to ensure that no species in this galaxy is enslaved or destroyed while we have the power to prevent it." Victoria stood up. "This is madness. We are being seduced by a warrior culture. This will lead us back to the path of violence and conquest." "No," said loudly. "It will lead us to the path of protecting our own people. That is not conquest, that is survival." The vote took place at dawn. By a margin of 7-5, the Council accepted its offer. They would allow human military assistance. They would combine their resources with the humans to strike against the slave operations, and they would open formal diplomatic channels between the government and the human colonies. As was released from custody and escorted toward the transport that would take him back to his ship, he turned to her. "Thank you for speaking in the chamber. Your voice made the difference." "My people needed to hear the truth," said, "even if the truth was hard to accept." Paused at the transport ramp. "What will you do now?" Smiled. "The Council is sending me as a liaison to your people. They want someone who understands both our culture and yours. They are asking me to learn what it means to be human." Smiled for the first time since had met him. "Welcome to something new. Welcome to a future that will be better for everyone." Command Center of the Joint Human Fleet was split into two sections. On one side, the humans coordinated their actions through tactical displays and advanced technology that seemed almost alien to the officers. On the other side, they managed their forces with careful deliberation and thoughtful strategy. Moved between both sections, translating not just language, but also the different ways that humans thought about warfare. The plan was complicated but straightforward. The slave operations relied on three main strongholds. One was on the moon orbiting a gas giant in the outer reaches. Another was on a mining colony inside an asteroid field. The third was the main command center, hidden deep within a nebula. They would strike all three simultaneously. The goal was not just to destroy the forces, but to free the enslaved people before the raiders could execute them. Stood beside as the final briefing took place. She had spent the last 3 weeks aboard the human command ship, learning how his people approached military strategy. What surprised her most was not their ferocity but their care. Every plan included evacuation routes for civilians. Every strike was timed to minimize casualties. Every decision was evaluated not just for military success, but for human cost. "They will attack the stronghold explained to the combined officers. They will be supported by human strike teams to handle resistance that they cannot overcome. Our goal is to free the enslaved workers and secure the facility." He pulled up another display. "The asteroid field operation is more dangerous. They have mined that area heavily. We will send a mixed team of humans to navigate the minefield and reach the central facility. Speed is important, but we cannot risk destroying the very people we are trying to rescue." The human officer who had served alongside at Helios Prime added, "We have coordinated with the resistance fighters inside the facility. They will cut power to the detention cells at the moment of our assault. This will give us a window of approximately 4 minutes to reach the captives before the backup power comes online." An officer named Charles raised his hand. "What about the command center? That is the most heavily defended position." His expression became harder. "That is where I will go, with a small team of volunteers. We need to destroy their ability to coordinate. If we leave the command center intact, they can retreat and regroup. We need to end this in one strike." Charles stood up. "I will lead our forces to assist you." Nodded. He had learned to appreciate the approach to military cooperation. They lacked the training of human soldiers, but they made up for it with courage and commitment. The assault began at exactly 400 hours. The first wave struck. Assault shuttles descended through the thin atmosphere while human fighters provided air support. The defenders tried to organize a resistance, but they were caught off guard. They had not expected a coordinated attack from two species. By 5:30 hours was secure. 743 enslaved workers were freed. The asteroid field operation was more complicated. The mixed team had to navigate between the mines while engaging defenders. At one point, a soldier named Henry was caught by shrapnel from a mine explosion. A human medic named Stephen stopped and carried him to safety, even though it meant slowing down the entire team by 30 seconds. At the central facility, they found 2,000 enslaved workers. The resistance fighters inside helped guide them through the complex. When the backup power came online earlier than expected, himself carried 3 children out of the detention block and got them to the shuttles. By 6:30 hours, the asteroid facility was secured. 2,000 people were being transported to safety. But the command center operation was failing. And his team had reached the nebula, but the defenses were stronger than expected. The human ships could not get close enough to perform a precision strike because of the interference from the nebula itself. Had to make a choice. He led a small team of 12, 6 humans and 6, into the nebula on fighter ships. They had to navigate the cloud of gas and particles while under constant fire from the fleet. 3 human fighters were destroyed in the approach. 2 pilots died before they reached the base. Inside the command center, and his remaining team fought through level after level of corridors. They proved to be better fighters than anyone expected. Charles fought with a strength and determination that made realize that peace had not made his people weak. It had only made them unaware of their own strength. At the command center's core, they found the leader of the fleet, a creature named who was massive and covered in scars from countless battles. Challenged directly, believing that he could defeat any human warrior. The fight was brutal and intense, was powerful and experienced, but was faster and more importantly, he was smarter. He did not try to match strength directly. Instead, he used his own momentum against him. He moved with precision and purpose. The battle ended when drove his blade through his chest. The commander fell, and with him fell the unified resistance of his fleet. Charles rushed to his side as the human warrior dropped to one knee, bleeding from multiple wounds. "We have secured the command center," Charles reported. Nodded. "How many people did we find?" 1,200, Charles said. "All the records show 1,000 more scattered across other facilities. We will need to go after them." Pulled himself up with Charles's help. "We will, but first we honor the fallen." They gathered the bodies of the human and soldiers who had died in the assault. 23 humans and 17 had given their lives to strike this blow against slavery. Stood before the gathered forces of both species and spoke. "We came together as strangers. We leave as brothers and sisters. The threat has been broken. Your people are free." The combined force stood in silence, recognizing the weight of what they had accomplished and the cost they had paid. As they prepared to leave the command center, appeared on the communication channel. "We have news from the council is sending official congratulations. They have declared a memorial day for all those who died, human and alike, and they are requesting that you return to the capital world for a celebration." Looked at his wounds and at the exhausted faces of his team. He thought about the thousands of people who had been freed. He thought about the threat that had been broken. "Tell them we will come," he said. "But first, we will finish the job and free all the others we know are imprisoned." The slave operations were completely dismantled over the next 3 months. Every facility was raided. Every enslaved person was liberated. The fleet was destroyed, and the survivors fled to the far edges of space where they could not threaten anyone. And in doing so, humans had become something new. They had become allies. They had become partners. They had become the guardians that the galaxy had not even known it needed, The celebration lasted 3 days. The streets were filled with people who came to see the humans who had saved them from slavery and exploitation. They came to honor the soldiers who had died. They came to witness the moment when the myths became real and changed everything. Stood on a balcony overlooking the city at his side. Below them, crowds of moved through the streets, and among them walked human soldiers. They moved together, not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals who had fought together and bled together. "How does it feel," asked him, "to be welcomed like this?" Was quiet for a moment, watching the crowds. His uniform was cleaned and his wounds had been treated, but he still carried himself like a soldier. "It feels like we have come home, even though we were never here before." Inside the council chamber, the formal proceedings took place. The head of the council stood before, and a delegation of human leaders that had arrived from the colonies. The ancient's white skin seemed to glow in the crystalline light of the chamber. "Today we declare a formal alliance between the people and the human colonies," announced. "We recognize that your people have saved us from a threat we could not face alone. We recognize that your choice to end your isolation and help us was an act of courage and compassion. And we invite you to rejoin the galactic community, not as masters or conquerors, but as partners and friends." The human delegation leader, a woman named Sarah who had gray at her temples and eyes that had seen as much war as own, stepped forward. "We accept your offer of partnership. We ask only that together we work to ensure that no being in this galaxy is enslaved or exploited. We ask that we build a future where strength is used to protect the weak, not to dominate them." A new trade agreement was announced. Human technology would be shared with them to help them build faster ships and better defensive systems. Art and philosophy would be studied by humans who had spent so long in isolation that they had forgotten the beauty of creation beyond survival and protection. But most importantly, an announcement was made that sent shockwaves through the entire galaxy. The Galactic Council, which had functioned as a governing body for hundreds of species, was being reformed. Humanity would take a seat at the table, not a seat of dominance or control, but a seat where their voice would be heard. And the Council declared new laws that made slavery illegal across all known space. The species that violated these laws would face the combined military power of both humans and. The galaxy held its breath. Some species were relieved, others were afraid. The return of humanity changed the balance of power in ways that would take decades to fully understand. That evening received a message through the human communication network. It was from his wife. Her face appeared on his personal display, and he saw tears in her eyes. "Caroline and I have been watching everything," said, her voice shaking slightly. "We have been watching you fight and lead and do everything we knew you could do. I want you to know that I am proud of you, and I want you to know that we are waiting for you to come home." The message ended and held the device in his hand for a long time. Home. He had not thought about home in months. He had been focused on the mission on the freed slaves. Found him on the balcony again that night, looking out at the stars. The city had grown quiet as the celebrations ended. Tomorrow, normal life would begin again. "I have been thinking about what I want to do," said, standing beside him. "The Council has offered me a position as the official liaison to the human colonies. They want me to study your culture and help find ways that our people can work together." "That is a good choice," said. "You will be excellent at it." "I want to ask you something," said. "Why did you really come back? I know what you told the Council. I know about the enslaved people but there was something more, was there not?" Was quiet for a long time. When humans first retreated to the outer colonies, we made a promise to ourselves. We said that we would watch the galaxy. We would learn from our mistakes. And if the day came when we could make a difference, when we could protect those who could not protect themselves, we would return. He looked at, for 3,000 years we waited. We wanted to see if the galaxy would learn. We wanted to see if other species would choose peace and wisdom. But we kept watching the violence. We kept watching slavery grow. We kept watching the innocent suffer. He turned back to the stars. So we came back because we could not stay away anymore. We came back because sitting on the sidelines while people suffered was not the same as peace. It was just cowardice with another name. And what about your family? Asked. Will they come here? Will they be part of this new future? Smiled. Does not want to leave our home. She is a botanist and she is working on ways to grow food on hostile worlds. She sees how her work can help other species, and that gives her purpose. Caroline is the same way. She is studying how to help species adapt to new environments. He pulled out the data device where he kept his family's images. They are helping in their own way, and soon I will go home to them. The Council of and the human leadership have agreed. I will return home and will travel to the human colonies to continue the work of building understanding between our peoples. Looked at the images of his family. She saw the love in his eyes when he talked about them. She understood then that warriors were not created by wanting violence. They were created by wanting to protect those they loved. And the greatest warriors were those who fought not for glory or conquest, but for the safety of others. I am ready, said. When do we leave? 3 days, said. There is a human transport ship arriving to take me home and to bring you to our colonies. The 3 days passed quickly, participated in more celebrations and official events. He met with military leaders and political figures. He answered questions about human technology and human society. Everywhere he went, they looked at him with a mixture of awe and gratitude. But in his heart was already thinking about home. He was thinking about waiting in their small house with its garden of earth plants. He was thinking about Caroline and her research. He was thinking about the simple life he had left behind when duty called. When the human transport arrived, it was commanded by a woman named Grace. She had served in the military for 30 years and had been commanding officer in the early days of the colonies. She embraced him tightly when she saw him. Welcome home, warrior, she said. You have earned your rest. As the ship lifted away from stood at the observation window with. They watched the planet grow smaller beneath them. The lights of the cities twinkled like stars reflected on water. What do you think will happen now? Asked, with both our species working together. Considered the question carefully. I think the galaxy will be different. Some species will fear us. Some will see us as saviors. Some will try to test our resolve. But I think overall, those who would prey on the weak will find it much harder to do so. He turned to look at. Your people have compassion and wisdom. We have strength and strategy. Together, we are something greater than either of us could be alone. That is the future that we are building. As the ship made the jump into hyperspace, finally allowed himself to relax. The myths had become real. The humans had returned. And instead of bringing destruction and domination as the ancient texts had suggested, they had brought hope. Would be waiting. Caroline would be excited to hear all the stories. And for the first time in months, looked forward to a future that was not defined by war and conflict, but by rebuilding and creating something new. The galaxy had changed forever, and it would never be the same again.